Hey everyone, welcome to module number 5. So we've covered quite a bit of information up to this point. Let's take a quick recount because I know that you're probably watching these. Maybe some of you are binge watching and you're trying to get it all done at one time, or maybe you've taken a break and just are coming back to it now. So let's take stock in terms of where we were at. So so far in modules 1 through 4, we've talked about taking stock of where you're at, and that's putting together a personal balance sheet, personal financial statement. That's what most bankers are going to call that. So it's really about taking a stock of where you are. So that's why, again, if a map is only good if you know where you are and you know where you're going, right? So that's why in module 1 we're taking stock of where we're at, and module 4 we're taking stock of where we're going with our vision, right? So that's the whole point of having a map. It's only helpful if you know where you are and you know where you want to go. Number 2, we talked about credit. We talked a lot about credit scores, a little bit about debt service coverage. Just for some clarity there, I want to make sure in terms of debt service coverage, there's a lot to it, but I spoke incorrectly there where I said it's the revenues. All of the revenues, if you've got $1 of revenues that are coming in, and that offsets the debt service, right? So $1.25 of revenues. It's actually $1.25 of net revenues. So that means after you take out all of your expenses and then what's left. So if you have you'll have your gross income that comes in. That's all your revenues minus your expenses. And then you have your net, and then the net minus the debt service, that would give you your debt service coverage. So I just want to make sure I was correct there. But if you have any specific questions related to debt service, you're more than welcome to contact me. But most of you are going to be borrowing on the residential side, especially getting started. So we talked about credit, the FICO bank card scores and the FICO scores and all that stuff. So whether you're looking at Credit Karma or you're looking at My FICO, you got all that stuff. And then finally, in module 3, we talked about identifying the fastest path to cash and how to deleverage yourself. And that for some of you, your fastest path to cash is getting out of debt, is paying off those loans that are not serving you well, and stop spending your money on nonsense and putting it towards getting yourself financially free and getting that money and getting that cash and that capital together so you can actually put it towards a rental property. Then, as I spoke already about module 4, that was putting together your vision for the future, and that's the one we just finished up on. So hopefully you have had some good opportunity to sit down and get really quiet and introspective and listen to yourself in terms of what it is you really, really want, and not what you think you want, not what you've been indoctrinated to think that you want. Maybe it's not driving around a Lambo, but maybe it's doing something much more purposeful. Again, I'm not here to judge either way. I think Lamborghinis are cool too, but for me, having that financial freedom to do what I want and not have what I want is way more powerful. Okay, so for number 5 here, module number 5, we're going to talk more specifically about real estate, and the types of properties that you want to invest in. So let me just put this out there first and foremost. Real estate is 100% local in nature. What happens here on this street can be substantially different to what happens literally the street over. And why is that? Because things are different. As you move from one spot in town to the next, you're going to cross lines of demarcation. Well, what kind of lines of demarcation are out there? Well, probably one of the bigger ones that drives values more than anything are school districts, especially people who want to send their kids to the better schools in the area. People will pay more to live there. That's the end of it, right? Think of other lines of demarcation. Think of properties that are on the beach and properties that are not on the beach, right? There's a clear line of demarcation. It's literally one side of the street to the other, one that's beachfront and one that you can see the ocean, but you're not quite beachfront. It's not going to be as valuable, right? And those are clear lines of demarcation. just from one side of one side of a county to the other. One county will be more desirable than the other, just because, again, school districts, or just because property taxes are lower or higher, or whatever it is. Just understand that real estate is inherently local. So what I'm going to be talking about to you here is going to be I'm going to try to apply this universally, but you're going to have to do your own diligence and learn about your market specifically. Because if I've got someone watching this from Battle Creek, Michigan, it's going to be a little different, or substantially different, from someone who's watching it in Macon, Georgia. So that's why I want to make sure that you understand you have to do your own diligence. I can only bring you so far. I can only give you the tool in your toolbox, but this is what you need to be aware of. So I know a lot of people right now, really a lot of people are really hung up in multifamily investing. And I'm not here to tell you that that's a good strategy or bad strategy. As long as it's in alignment with your vision for the future, I don't care. I really don't care what you invest in. And what you may find out at the end of this, that maybe real estate isn't even the vessel that you need. I'm not going to suggest another vessel is better for you. It's the vessel that worked out well for me, so I can go out and write books and teach and coach and spend time doing that, because that's what I love to do. I don't particularly love real estate investing, but I like the challenge of it. I like the negotiations. I like working with people. I like all the things that I'm was well suited for doing that stuff. Right? I'm well suited for the contract negotiations and putting things together and putting policies and procedures in place and then letting someone else run them. So it was funny, my accountant the other day, I gave her, I was in the field and I gave her a receipt, and she looked at me and she goes, "This is not how we turn in receipts, Mark." And I was like, okay. And I'm getting scolded by my accounting person. And I was like, okay, how do we turn in receipts? She goes, you have to fill in the log over there, and you put the log in place. Basically what we have to do is, when in our office, because we would be getting people that would turn in a bunch of receipts and say that they turned them in and we never received them and blah, blah, blah. So I put in a receipt log. Now, I forgot I did this. This was literally like 3 years ago that we put this in place, but it was a procedure that, because I hadn't done it, I just forgot about it. But she had been true and loyal to that policy and procedure because it was so impactful and so effective. But basically all you're doing is you're signing in the receipt, and then she would acknowledge it, she received it, and she would initial off on it. But I completely and totally forgot that that's what we were doing. And it's a good policy. It doesn't mean it's a bad policy because I forgot, but because that's not what I do. My role I'm not an implementer, right? I'm a visionary type person. And she's an implementer. She knows her role and she stays in that. So I don't want to get hung up on that. That's a whole different topic. But from that perspective, I had someone who was doing the job that I just wasn't well suited for. So you're going to find yourself, as you're looking at this, and and you're getting into the real estate and you're learning about the market, and many of you're not going to be able to save your way into properties that may be in your local area, especially if you're on the coasts, like, in California or New York. Property values are so expensive that, you might be looking at a rental that might be $500,000-$600,000. And if you get 20% equity on a property, that might be too far for you to go. So you may have to look in other areas that might interest you. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I've invested in properties, mostly single-family dwellings, but I've invested in all types of properties, specifically here in the Indiana market. Now, I will tell you, every time I've invested in a property, whether I take it on for management or whether I take it on as actual ownership, I am always looking at one thing and one thing only. How marketable is it to my ideal client avatar? Now, when I'm talking about my ideal client avatar, I'm talking about people who are who make decent enough money to where I'm not going to have to worry about them paying rent. So I know many of you out there, you've been hearing about HUD and it's guaranteed money and all this stuff. I'm just going to say this, and I hope it doesn't come out brash, but I don't think it's a question of if you get screwed. I think it's a question of when you get screwed. I'm not saying that HUD's going to just not pay you. But here's the problem, and this is the problem that I experienced with HUD, me locally. So this is my truth. It's not the truth. Feel free to do your own due diligence. Talk to other people that do HUD investing, and this is the lower end type properties. So just understand where I'm coming from here. HUD, if let's say for argument's sake that the resident has that they have a lease violation. You pick one. It could be they bought a dog. They got they're moving in their cousin. They're not mowing the grass. Whatever. Pick one. It doesn't really matter what it is. Well, I go to the resident and say, you need to correct this lease violation or else, right? Well, that sounds great. But then the or else comes, and now it comes to the point where you have to actually do something. Well, even if you went to HUD specifically and said, hey, they've got a problem with X, Y, or Z, they've got one arrow in their quiver, and that's to cut them off. Okay, so think about that for a second. So let's say that they had someone living there, or they've got these lease violations, and they say, okay, we're going to cut you off. So we're no longer going to subsidize you. Now, that's a big deal to them, but that's also, it's been free money. So they really haven't been valuing it that much for the most part. I'm speaking in broad brush terms here for a second, but to 70 or 80% of the population that are receiving HUD, especially if they're getting a full subsidy. Now, I'm telling you what my experience has been. I'm not going to say that they don't care, but they really don't care. They're like, whatever, we'll figure it out another way then, right? Now, getting on the HUD voucher program for some of them is like hitting the damn lottery. I mean, it really is. But they don't value it. They just kind of look at it as almost like an entitlement, and they'll just figure that they'll get the money in another way, whether it's some other program or whatever. I know I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback on this. I'm only just telling you about what my experience has been, because when they would cut them off, who does that really hurt? It obviously hurts you, the landlord, the most, because now these people are cut off from the program. Now they're in there living in the property with no real income. They might have a job. They might not. They're not necessarily required to work if they're on the HUD program in most areas. So now you've got this problem where they can't pay. They probably can't pay for utilities. So you've got a significant problem on your hands. Now you're evicting this person. They're basically judgment proof because they've got no income that you can attach to. Maybe they're on disability, maybe they're on Social Security, but you can't attach to that. So now you get this property back with $5,000 to $10,000 worth of damage that you get to fix that you can never ever recover. Okay, so let that soak in for just a second. I did this game for probably close to 8 years before I started losing properties back in 0809. And those properties that I lost, I never recognized how much actual drama it was causing me in my life. Now, we don't accept the housing voucher. We don't accept HUD. And now, just let me tell you this. There are some areas which do require landlords to accept the housing voucher, which I don't understand at all. I think that's illegal, but they're passing the law that you have to live with it. But the HUD program was designed to be a volunteer federal program that you could opt into. But some locales, especially, there's some local ordinances, and I don't think it's ever been passed on a statewide basis, but I don't know that, so you have to do your own due diligence on that. But there are areas which do require landlords to accept the housing voucher. If that was an area, okay, fine. Then what I would do is make sure that I'm investing in properties that are well in excess of what the limits are that HUD would subsidize. Because it just, if I'm looking at a $2,000 or $2,500 a month rental in this area, that's way more than what HUD would subsidize. Now they may, because generally it's just too much. It's just too much house for those residents. So I just want to make sure that you understand what I am not a fan of that program. I think it has good intentions. I think it helps the 10 to 20% of the people that really, really, truly need it and really, truly value it. And their goal is to get off the program by going to school, but, doing better. But some people, they have to live on that because all they get is Social Security or disability, and they're good residents. They are. But unfortunately, a few bad apples has put me over a barrel too many times and costs me literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in the course of being on that program. And quite frankly, I would rather choose to donate my money than work with that type of clientele, because it was just so frustrating. And I'm getting threats. I'm getting people wanting to fight me. It was nonsense. It was absolute nonsense. So I just decided that just wasn't a good fit for me. If it's a good fit for you and you want to go down that road, I'm just letting you know, make sure you understand what the risks are. Okay, so that's that. So the types of properties that I like are generally going to be higher end properties, and properties that are not the ones that you probably are looking at, that are probably being fed to you by some flippers and wholesalers, where they say, oh, all it needs is carpet and paint. You can buy this for $30,000 and you'll get a 22% capitalization rate on there. I don't care about cap rate. I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is the net dollar that's coming in. Now, let me explain that. I don't care if a property is a $30,000 property or a $300,000 property. There are certain things that cost what they cost. For example, a toilet. If I have to buy a new toilet, a toilet costs what a toilet costs. Now, if I had to do a toilet repair, let's pretend I just had to pay a plumber to replace a toilet, for just as an example. That's probably going to be somewhere around a $300 repair, just back of the napkin math. Say $100 for the toilet, $200 for the plumber. That's a $300 repair. Now, that would probably wreck my cash flow on a $30,000 unit for at least a whole month. Now, if I'm looking at a property that is bringing in $2,500 a month in cash flow, it's a blip on the radar, but it's not going to wreck me. If I have a $5,000 repair to do on a roof or a furnace, that would wipe out my cash flow for an entire year on a low-end property, versus the high-end property, which might be a month or two. Okay, do you see what I'm talking about, the net dollar? This is why it's important to choose properties wisely. I like properties, if I find what the average rents are in the area, I like to be above the average. So, and I would say by at least 10 to 20% above the average. And not because I'm trying to price my properties higher, but because they're worth more. So the types of properties I like specifically, I'm not turning away multifamily, but I just didn't do a lot of investing in multifamily. I had a 16-unit apartment building. I've had multiple duplexes and triplexes and quads. But one of the things that I loved about single-family dwellings more than anything else is the rate of occupancy. I would have people moving out the back door while people were trying to move in the front door. And people love living in a single-family home. They just do. Why do you think there's so many people on VRBO or Airbnb that like to rent single-family homes? Because they don't have to share a wall with anybody. They want to have some privacy. And I'll be honest with you, I had to live in an apartment not too long ago when I was moving. I was in between houses, and the only place I needed to get in out of the rain was an apartment that was not far from where I was moving, and I had to share walls with people. I had to listen to fights. I had to smell their pot smoke through the ventilation system, and all the nonsense that goes on in the parking lots. And then you have to worry about your car getting broken into. I mean, all that stuff. Now, granted, this wasn't a particularly low-end area, but it was just stuff I just didn't want to have to deal with. So, you can pick your poison on that. I just personally, I like single-family dwellings. It's what I know. It's what I'm comfortable with. And quite frankly, if I ever had to divest my portfolio, finding a buyer for a single-family dwelling, you have two potential buyers there, right? You have an investor and you have a potential homeowner that maybe wants to buy the property. And a lot of times, maybe you could even try selling it to the resident that's living there. Whereas when you have a multifamily, especially these larger apartment complexes, Now, right now is a little bit of the exception where everybody's looking to buy an apartment complex, but there's not that many people who are going to be able to qualify to buy that. And remember, we're talking about commercial lending here, where you're dealing with just a different type of banker. So I want to make sure that you understand that from the aspect of what you're trying to invest in, so the single family dwelling market has always made more sense to me. So that's why I look at properties that are in good school districts that have high rates of rent compared to everywhere else, and are going to attract the types of clientele these are grown up professionals that are going to pay their rent, and they probably are going to pay their rent well in advance. They know how to pay their bills. They're worried about their credit score, so they're not going to try to worry about an eviction or anything along those lines. And these are people that you generally don't mind working with. Now, they're going to call on things that you would kind of say like, well, that's kind of being a little nitpicky. I would rather they be nitpicky, because that means that they care about the property. That means that they're worried about, because the light switch doesn't work and then you have to jiggle it and it's like, oh, okay. Whereas you kind of go, well, why are you being so nitpicky? Well, you know what? Because that could be something that potentially could cause a fire that someone else doesn't care about, and they just leave it and they tape it. They put tape on it and try to make it work, and they think they're doing you a favor by not calling. This is the sort of stuff that you need to avoid, and the type of drama with the other type of clientele. So I just want to make sure you understand that the types of properties and the market itself really do make a difference. So let's talk a little bit about, now that you're identifying the types of properties that you want to be in. Maybe it's college rentals, maybe it's single family dwellings in college towns, or multi units in college towns, or you want to be in the plain old boring subdivisions that are the typical vinyl villages, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 1,500 square feet. Those are the stuff that I do all day long. They're boring, and you know what? They pay, and we never really hear from them. And, every now and again, we might have to replace a roof. Every now and again, we might have to replace a furnace or a refrigerator. But that's the stuff that's baked in the cake, because the cash flow is already there to do it. It's not a problem to do that stuff. Okay, so where do you get these properties? And that's why, once you help identify the types of properties that you want to get into, and hopefully I've made the case where you're looking to get into some of these higher end type units, but I generally would not recommend getting into anything less than 3 bedrooms. 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom rentals give you many more options to rent than 2-bedroom or 1-bedrooms or anything along those lines. I just think that most people, you've got. I was in a weekend seminar just recently with Robin Thompson, and she just brought up a really, really good point that, and if you don't know her, she's the queen of rehab, does a really, really good job, and she was talking about landlord stuff. And one of the things that she mentioned was that the internet basically has required the need for the 4th bedroom. Basically, the internet's taken over the 4th bedroom, which means you've got a lot of people working from home, which now requires them to have a home office in that 4th bedroom. Maybe you've got an aging mother situation, and then she's not quite ready for assisted living, but she's not really, she really can't live by herself. Well, there's your 4th bedroom right there. So I like at least 3 and 4 bedroom homes. The 2-bedroom homes they're just, dollar for dollar, side by side comparison. If someone can rent a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, they're going to rent the 3-bedroom, because they're just going to think they're going to need the extra space, right? Even if they don't, they can put it and fill it up with crap, fill it up with all their Christmas decorations. But the point is, they're going to have, they have space that they may need, may not need. Maybe they're planning on expanding their family, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, whatever. But the point is, dollar for dollar, if someone's looking at a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, most oftentimes all things being equal, they're going to take the 3-bedroom. So just keep that in mind. So I like at least 3 bedrooms. I like at least 2 bathrooms. And for the same reason that I told you, like if they're going to have people over, or if they're going to have, if they've got a family of any sort, they don't want to have to share a bathroom, where everybody's trying to get into the bathroom in the morning to take showers and that sort of thing. So 3 bedrooms, at least 2 full bathrooms, and a garage. The garage is really, really important, because people have crap, and they'll they'll fill their garage up with all their crap and they park their expensive vehicles out in the driveway. But you know what? That's what people will do. And you might be saying, well, Mark, why would someone pay, let's say for argument's sake, that the rents in your area for these 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses, let's say that they're, $1,800 a month. Why would someone pay $1,800 a month when they can buy a house? And that's a very valid question. And you know what? I was hung up on that for a long time. I'd say, well, the market just isn't there for something like that. Why would they pay $1,800 a month when they can easily get a mortgage? And these are people who are well qualified for mortgages, right? The reason being is because we are in much more of a mobile society than ever before. And I think that speaks to the rate of home ownership being at the lowest rate it ever has been. I think we're down below easily into the 60 percentages now. It's the high 60s, low 70% in terms of, I don't remember the exact metrics lately, but we are at record low home ownership. And that's because people right now, they're a little afraid, especially back from what happened during the Great Recession, but they've also got jobs that could move them at a moment's notice. And if if this guy is trying to climb the corporate ladder and he's an assistant VP of sales, and all of a sudden a job opens up in another state, and all he's got to do is break a lease, that's way easier to deal with than if this guy has to sell his house and then the corporate buyout package and all that other stuff. So it just makes things a lot easier. In my particular hometown, I've got Purdue University, within a golf shot from where I sit, and you got lots of people who are coming into the area that are just coming in as adjunct professors for just a period of time, or other jobs that are in this manufacturing area that they don't know how long they're going to be here. They might be here for 2 years or 3 years, but they're not sure. Sometimes people come here for recruiting, military recruiting or job recruiting, and they know that the type of job that they're in is transient. They're only going to be in a particular area for 2 or 3 years, and they want to be in an area where the school district is good, and they don't have to worry about the drama that I talked about, when I was living in an apartment. So that's the sort of stuff that these people are interested in. So now I again, going back to making that case, where are you going to find these types of properties? Well, now that you've identified the type of property that you're looking for, it's a little bit easier for you to start focusing your search on how to buy these properties. Now, let me tell you this. You're not going to be able to pay retail for a property like that and basically get into how do I want to say this? You're not going to be able to pay retail for a property, i.e. buy it through the MLS, through a realtor, and then get pay the $2,800 a month and think that you're going to get ahead very quickly. You're either going to have to pay less for the property or be able to charge more for the property. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. Paying less for the property means that you buy it at a sheriff's sale, you buy it on some sort of auction, or you deal directly with the owner of the property and pay less for it. That's sometimes it means you buy it at a tax sale, whatever that is. Now, keep in mind, there's lots of people who are doing that, especially tax sales and especially sheriff sales. What a lot of people are not doing, though, is contacting the owners of the properties directly. And that's where you can get into these properties, usually at a pretty significant discount if you do this well. So I talked about wholesaling and that sort of thing a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to get into that because I'm not really a wholesaling, I don't have a wholesaling course, but there's lots of people who do, and there's plenty, there's no shortage of information on how to do wholesaling. But one of the things that I do is I will contact the owners of the properties directly, especially if they live out of state. Now, why is that? Out-of-state owners are having to deal with these properties mentally. There's this mental burden that they have to deal with these properties that they might be living in Colorado, but they are they've got this property in Lafayette, Indiana, so they're renting it and the renters are coming, but this becomes a mental burden for them, even if they're making money. So a lot of times when they get a letter from a guy like me that says, hey, I'm interested in buying your property, they're at least going to start thinking about it. Now, for the most part, they may come back with an offer that says, well, I know the property's worth $300,000 and I'm not going to take a penny less than that. And if I wanted to list it on the market, that's what I'll get. Okay, fine. List it on the market and go ahead and get that. I'm not going to pay $300,000 for it, even though it may be worth that, but I'm not going to offer them $300,000 cash or put in myself in a mortgage situation where that's going to happen. So, but I may offer them, if it's going to be a cash offer, now I'm going to go through this really quickly, but I may offer them either a 70% of what the actual property value is as a cash offer, or I may offer them some sort of deal which offers them owner financing, which basically gets them the cash flow that they've been enjoying for a long period of time. Now, if they own the property free and clear, I mean, I'm going to work with them as much as I possibly can, because they don't really care, and they've already proven that they don't really need the money. Otherwise, they probably would have already sold the property. So that is the type of client that you definitely want to be working with. Now, I'm running a little bit lean on time because it's getting into 30 minutes or so. But one of the places where I identify where these people are is through these list services where you can buy lists of people who have equity in properties. And one of them that I like to use is listsource.com. Go to listsource.com and you can buy lists of people who have who've owned their property at least 7 years. That's going to be critical. Who own the property at least 7 years, which means they have equity. You can identify properties lots of different ways, and we'll just say that. So you can go to listsource.com. There's other ones out there that are similar, but I'll just leave it at that one because that was one of the ones that I like to use, and that's one I've had really good luck with. But also, you can just get logged into your local tax assessor website and see what you can literally just scroll through some of them and see who's an out-of-state owner and who's not an out-of-state owner. Or even if it's you can tell pretty quickly if it's a landlord. If you go to the local eviction court listings, someone who's got an eviction that's coming up, that's an easy person to market to because they're having to deal with an eviction and they have no idea what they're walking into when that property has been, the property's potentially been destroyed. So you can contact the owner of the property and saying, hey, I saw that your property's coming up you've got an eviction filed. Just didn't know if it might be a good opportunity for me to maybe look into buying the property from you. And a distressed seller is a great person to be talking to and those sorts of things. So again, identifying the people who you can buy the properties from, out-of-state owners who've owned their property for more than 7 years, and who definitely have equity in the property. Ideally, would be someone who's got a property free and clear, and also a landlord who's either had a current eviction or is about to have a current eviction. Those are people that are definitely, I always want to talk to them because they are definitely about selling their property, and a lot of times you can just get into it for not much money. Okay. Finally, let me just say this one more time. Resist the low-end units. Resist the low-end units. Please make sure that you're identifying the types of properties that would work best for you and your vision for the future. The reason why you need to have that vision really clearly lined out, like I said, in the VIP paradigm, it's vision, infrastructure, process. What you're going to read in the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, you have to have a solid vision for your future, because when you put an infrastructure in place, and an infrastructure is the bones of the business, it's the desks, the chairs, the websites, all the stuff like that, and the software. When you put all that stuff together, it needs to be in alignment with your vision for the future. And, real quick example, if your vision of the future is to lay on the beach and rub cocoa butter on your belly, you can't have an infrastructure that's going to require you to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, because that's going to suck for you if you want to lay on the beach rubbing cocoa butter on your belly, because you have to return emails and phone calls. So that's why I want to make sure that you have a really good understanding of where you're trying to go before you start to try to figure out what products that you're trying to deal with. Okay? All right. That's all I have for Module 5 about learning about the market and finding deals. I hope this was helpful. The next section, the next module is module number 6, where we're going to be talking about securing financing for these properties when you do find them, and how you can wrap this all together and about getting into your first rental property within the next year. We'll see you very soon.